Boring mystery for sleep. The Desert Sky, the story of Shauna Maynard once, under the sweeping open skies of Nevada, where mountains stand like velvet shadows against endless blue. A young girl named Shauna found herself on the edge of a new life. Shauna grew up in sunny California, a bright student with big eyes and dreams as wide as the horizon. She'd hurried through classes, finishing high school at Buena Vista 2 years ahead of most. She loved sketching dresses and daydreamed of making her way in the fashion world. Yet, even as she spun hopeful plans, her home wasn't always gentle, as sometimes happens in stories that make their way to the edges of memory. When she was just 17, Shauna made the choice that changed everything. She left home. Perhaps there was a falling out, or simply a young heart's yearning for adventure and independence. She moved in with her older sister in Corona, California, but as New Year's Eve approached, Shauna found herself facing the second kind of disappointment that life can offer. She wanted to attend a party grown up, dazzling, full of promise. Her sister, cautious and loving, said no. The party was for adults. With youthful certainty, Shauna decided to take flight once again, not home this time, but to a city ablaze with electricity, hope, and beneath the surface, dangers unseen. She left California behind and set her sights on Las Vegas, the city of lights whispering of reinvention. Las Vegas was different than she expected. The neon lights seemed to burn brighter for others, but not quite for her. She and a friend found an apartment, and for a while, she tried to make it work. Yet the city's whirlpool of faces and fortunes can be cold to the lost and the lonely. Distanced from her mother and sister, Shauna's name was added quietly to the rolls of runaways, one among many who had faded from someone's home, hoping to be found by something better. For a time, Shauna worked in a small local restaurant. The clatter of plates and laughter in the kitchen offered a strange sort of comfort. When she wasn't there, she moved into an apartment with 2 mothers and their combined tangle of 7 children. She looked after their little ones, corralling them in playground laughter and bedtime stories of her own stories of the life she dreamed she would have. But shadows grew. The city was hard for gentle souls living on their own. Terry Miller, a woman whose eyes had seen too many stories end too soon, would later wonder if Shauna had crossed the blurry lines into a world darker than she could handle, a world of promises that weren't kept, of danger lurking in the guise of kindness. One night, everything changed. On April 20th, the city wind was restless, carrying secrets through the streets. Shauna was frightened. Something had happened in her apartment, a word, a look, a threat that prickled her skin with fear. She called her friend at 2 o'clock in the silent morning. She was crying, her words tumbling out. "I'm scared, my roommate. I think she's going to hurt me." Her friend, worried, wanted to help. "Let's get you out of there. I will call you a cab. Go to the casino on the corner, somewhere safe and bright. I'll meet you." But Shauna never made it. Somewhere before dawn, as the dark peeled away from the desert, a Las Vegas police officer, patrolling the wide spaces at the city's fringe, heard gunshots echo through nothingness 3, maybe 4. He called it in, but in the quiet sprawl of empty roads and Joshua trees, it's easy for secrets to hide. The desert is patient, holding its stories in sand and sage. At sunrise, the world greeted another ordinary day. 2 men driving past the lonely intersection of Decatur and Blue Diamond glanced out their window and saw, not emptiness, but the outline of a young woman unmoving, alone. They turned their car around, hearts stilled, and called the police. The girl had no purse, no wallet, no stories spoken on her lips. Only a high school class ring, shining gently on her finger, hinted at who she could have been. The officers carefully pieced together her story, tracing her home, her school, her dreams yet unseen. Detective Terry Miller and her team came to the scene, notebooks in hand, boots crunching on gravel, minds racing through possibilities. The crime was brutal. Shauna had been pistol whipped, her face marked by violence, and shot several times as she tried to escape. There was anger or perhaps fear from someone or several someones in those final hours. The investigators started to unravel Shauna's recent life. They learned of the two mothers she lived with, whose own children scampered through morning routines as though nothing was wrong. They heard from her friends, who described Shauna as kind, proud, fiercely determined not to call home or revisit the past she left behind. They discovered that on that fateful night, people had gathered outside Shauna's apartment. A man, his face blurred by time and memory, was seen with them, but no one gave his name. Detective Miller's mind whirred with questions. Who was this man? Why did none of the mothers or neighbors see, hear, or for that matter say anything? Why were all Shauna's belongings gone from the apartment when police searched it days later? Who, if anyone, noticed when a vulnerable young woman slipped from a crowded apartment into the uncertain night? The city kept its secrets. The two mothers claimed sleep had shielded them from knowledge. No one could or would say what happened to Shauna's things. A year later, as the case cooled, hearts beat on, but answers evaporated. The silence of the apartment and the silence of the desert became one. But Las Vegas is a city of stories, and with time, stories gather clues. Detective Miller pressed on, searching for patterns and whispers, even rumors, as she looked for justice. She told Shauna's story to anyone who would listen, appearing on podcasts and radio, describing the possibilities. Was Shauna ensnared by a trafficking ring? Had she turned away love with a gentle, honest, no only to be met with rage? Did her roommates know more than they said? Who were the man and woman in the old 1950s brown truck with its rounded fenders, seen parked near where Shauna lay? Sometimes the detective mused, the answer hides in guilt that ages into confession or in a memory waiting to be unlocked. She kept hope close because in her heart she knew all it takes is one person to remember. One person to come forward. Shauna's family, wrapped in sorrow and pride, held on to the best parts of her, a little sister with a bright spirit and big dreams, who left home searching for a place to belong. They believed her choices were made with hope, not recklessness, and that somewhere she had found friendship, laughter, and perhaps, for a while, happiness. There are stories still waiting to be told in every city, and the desert, too, holds its breath for justice, a justice that might yet come with the dawn. So the city quiets, and the story rests. Shauna's spirit moves in the hush of a mother's memory, in the echo of a sister's hope, and in the gentle persistence of a detective who walks the line between what is known and what is hidden. May her story, gentle and bright as a star over the Mojave, never be truly lost. Good night, Shauna Maynard. Good night to every seeker and to every story still unfinished, waiting for the light. Asha Degree. On Valentine's Day in the year 2000, a quiet, determined little girl vanished into the rain-soaked North Carolina night. Her name was Asha Degree, and for more than 2 decades, her story has haunted the fields, woods, and hearts of Cleveland County. She was only 9 years old. Asha Jaquilla Degree was born on August 5, 1990, the only daughter of Harold and Aquila Degree. The Degree family lived in a small rented duplex on Oakcrest Drive in a quiet neighborhood north of Shelby, North Carolina. Asha had an older brother, O'Brien, just a year her senior and her best friend. Together, they spent afternoons playing outside in the Carolina sunshine, riding bikes, and making up games in the yard. Asha was a shy and thoughtful girl, excelling in math and science at Fallston Elementary. She loved to draw and dreamed of becoming an author and an illustrator, maybe even a scientist. When she played basketball, she was the star point guard for the Little Bulldogs, her school's girls' team, and she loved playing softball with her brother. Her mother, Aquila, would remember Asha as her shadow. She was sweet, quiet, she never wandered. Not once. She was afraid of thunderstorms and dogs. If she had trouble, she'd come tell me or her daddy. The Degrees worked hard. Harold at the local PPG Industries plant, Aquila at the Colle Piano Factory. Their children, Asha and O'Brien, were latchkey kids, left to manage the after-school hours themselves, but under careful rules. Homework first, play outside if the chores were complete, bedtime at 9 o'clock on the dot. Friday, February 11th, 2000. There was no school that day. The Degree children played at their Aunt Kisha's house down the street. Later, they headed to basketball practice. On Saturday, February 12th, both Degree siblings played basketball. For Asha, it was a rare loss, her team's first of the season. She fouled out of the game just minutes before the buzzer. She copied her teammates' tears, limping and pretending to be more hurt by the loss than she really was. A little girl's way of making sense of disappointment. Her mother told her, "Asha, you can't always win. Somebody has to lose." She cried for a bit, but cheered up watching her brother play. After the game, Asha went to a slumber party at her cousin Katina's house. They stayed up late watching Soul Train, giggling and dancing in their pajamas. On Sunday, the family attended church, then went to a cousin's house, where Asha's grandmother gave her some cologne and a box of Valentine's candy. Later that evening, tired from the festivities, Asha lay down for an early nap at 6:30 p.m. As night fell, a thunderstorm swept through Cleveland County. Lightning struck. Somewhere nearby, a car crashed into a utility pole, knocking out the power as Aquila drew the bath for her children. With nothing to do but wait, she decided to put Asha and O'Brien to bed a bit early, just before 9 p.m. At 11:30 p.m., Harold slipped out for a last-minute trip to buy Valentine's treats for his wife. By 12:30 a.m., the power returned. Harold, wide awake, settled into the living room to watch TV and keep an eye on things. I checked on them around 2:30 a.m. Both asleep. They always slept sound, he would later recall. But it wasn't to last. O'Brien, in the darkness, woke and heard his little sister moving around her bed. He thought nothing of it, heard her get up, maybe to use the bathroom, and drifted back to sleep. Valentine's Day, Monday, February 14th. At 5:45 a.m. she was heading for the shower. She glanced into the children's bedroom. O'Brien asleep, Asha's bed empty and unmade. I thought she'd just gotten up early. I looked all over the house. She wasn't anywhere, Aquila said. Aquila dashed across the street to check with Asha's grandmother. Nothing. My heart just fell through the floor. I started screaming for her, calling her name. At 6:39 a.m., Harold called 911. Within minutes, deputies from the Cleveland County Sheriff's Office fanned through the neighborhood, calling her name, searching every yard, alley, drainage ditch, and shed. By 2 p.m., the home was sealed as a crime scene. There was no forced entry, no evidence of foul play. Both doors could be opened from the inside. They soon learned Asha had left the house with a black Tweety Bird pocketbook, candy she'd gotten after basketball, her house key, and a small collection of clothes. Her white nightgown, possibly her basketball uniform, and other items were missing from her drawers. That afternoon, a trucker named Jeff recognized her from news reports. He came forward with an extraordinary story. I saw her, walking south down Highway 18, 3:30 in the morning. It was raining. She had on a dress, white tennis shoes, hair in pigtails, carrying a book bag. She didn't look at me. I circled back, but she ran into the woods. Not long after, Roy and his son reported a similar sighting a mile further south. It was a small figure, light clothes. I thought maybe it was a woman, maybe a domestic thing, someone leading home, walking. Sent a CB message to watch out. The search shifted quickly, but the bloodhounds, hours after her disappearance, found no scent in the rain-soaked woods. The area, thick with brush and brambles, hid its secrets well. 2 days later, volunteers asked Raleigh and Debbie Turner, whose property lay a mile south of the Degree home, to check their outbuildings. In an old furniture shed, they found a strange assortment: a green marker, a 1996 Atlanta Olympics pencil, a yellow hairbow, some cellophane candy wrappers, and a wallet-sized photo of a little black girl. No one in Asha's world recognized her. Her family and classmates identified the other items as Asha's. The candy wrappers matched those she'd gotten at the basketball game. The Degree home was scoured for evidence. Strangers, sex offenders, and anyone who'd had contact with Asha was questioned. Her parents, devastated, volunteered for polygraphs, welcomed law enforcement into their lives. Neither Harold nor Equala nor O'Brien were ever suspects. Authorities considered every possibility. Was Asha lured from her home by a trusted adult, perhaps posing as a child? Was she catfished by someone with bad intentions, possibly the girl in the photo? Did she leave to make a Valentine's present for her parents? Or was she running from trouble she couldn't explain? It didn't fit. Asha was careful, afraid of thunderstorms and dogs, and loving toward her family. The community was baffled. Experts said that children under 10 rarely run away and almost never plan an escape. Theories abounded. Some wondered if the reading of the book, The Whipping Boy, in class a story about 2 boys who run away at night, had made a particular impression on Asha. Others thought she may have been devastated by her basketball team's loss and falling out, blaming herself for the defeat. But those who knew her said she had recovered from the game and was happy at the sleepover and family gatherings the next day. Authorities called off the search for Asha on February 20th. They had spent over 9,000 man-hours and scoured the land, confident that she was no longer in the immediate area. In March, experts interviewed O'Brien and children at Asha's school. Her friends could not add much. They remembered she had showed them a few dollars in her wallet, but didn't know where it came from. The Degree family put up a billboard at the spot where Jeff saw Asha disappear into the woods. Sheriff Crawford told the public they were still trying to rule out suspects, questioned local sex offenders, and even considered the possibility of an online predator. Though the family did not own a computer, the FBI created an abduction profile, which has never been released to the public. In the summer of 2000, a man named Baron Ramsey, an old classmate of Aquil's, confessed to being involved, claiming he and another man accidentally struck Asha with their truck and disposed of her body in a lake, but no evidence supported the story. Authorities believe he fabricated the tale to get a lighter sentence in an unrelated case. On August 2nd, 2001, 26 miles north of Asha's home, grading contractor Terry Fleming discovered something when clearing a driveway: a black plastic bag wrapped tightly around a beige and black book bag. Inside was Asha's name and phone number. The book bag was double wrapped in trash bags and buried, likely for many months. Law enforcement never disclosed everything found in the bag, but said up to 99% of the contents belonged to Asha. The FBI and officers kept many details secret, possibly holding back clues only the perpetrator would know. Hardened search teams explored the steep, wooded area where the book bag was found, a place that would have been nearly impossible for a young child to reach alone. Cadaver dogs alerted to 3 spots in the area, but no further evidence was found. A pair of men's khaki pants and animal bones were discovered, but no connection was ever established. Another search, covering 26 miles of Highway 18 between Shelby and the site of the book bag, found no definitive new clues. Over the months and years, investigators chased many leads, from drifters to known sex offenders, to the Johnson brothers one, caught abducting and assaulting girls in nearby counties. The brothers denied involvement and provided alibis. Eventually, authorities ruled them out. Through time, small clues kept surfacing. In 2016, the FBI announced they were searching for a dark green, early 1970s Ford Thunderbird or Lincoln Mark IV, with rust around the wheel wells believed to have been occupied by 2 people encircling the area the night Asha vanished. The owner or driver was never found. In 2018, the sheriff's office revealed 2 more mysterious clues: a copy of the Dr. Seuss book, McElligot's Pool, checked out from Asha's school around the time of her disappearance, and a New Kids on the Block concert t-shirt that wasn't familiar to her parents. They have never revealed exactly when, where, or how these were recovered, nor why they matter, but have said quietly that there are even more secrets being kept within the investigation. The Degree family's pain only deepened. Weeks after the bag was found, Harold suffered a severe car accident and was hospitalized. Aquila fractured her foot visiting him and developed life-threatening complications. Both parents were out of work for nearly a year and had to rely on the support of their church and community. O'Brien grew up and started a family of his own. Every year, family and friends gather and walk the road where Asha was last seen, keeping her memory alive for everyone who passes by. Through everything, Harold, Aquila, and O'Brien have never given up hope. Aquila says, "We're not giving up hope until I have a body, or they call me to identify the body. And then I know I'm still not going to lose hope, because if Lord forbid he decides to take her, I know she's with God and she's taken care of, so I still won't have to worry." To this day, the disappearance of Asha Degree remains a mystery, a case unlike almost any other. She vanished in the middle of the night in pouring rain, seemingly of her own volition or in answer to a summons no one else heard, and was never seen again. Her face, young and hopeful, is etched into the memories of her family, her community, and everyone who calls Cleveland County home. The story of Asha Degree remains open, a silent question awaiting answer. In the winter of 2004, in the small Texas city of Corsicana, a 17-year-old named Andrea Cotton vanished without a trace. Her story isn't the subject of true crime documentaries or national news headlines, but in Navarro County and among those who care about missing persons, Andrea's name remains a sorrowful whisper, a reminder that not every mystery gets the answers it deserves, and not every person receives justice, no matter how many people know or pretend not to know what happened. To understand what led up to Andrea's disappearance, you have to understand the circumstances of her life. Corsicana, a town famous for fruitcakes, bluebonnets, and small-town traditions, has a harder edge beneath the surface. Poverty and prejudice have lived side by side with kindness and community for generations. Andrea's life reflected all those contradictions. Andrea was born into a family fractured by challenges that were bigger than any one person could fix. Her father was periodically incarcerated. Her mother struggled to provide a stable home, sometimes entangled with men who'd also had brushes with the law. One of these men, Andrea's mother's boyfriend in 2004, was a parolee with a violent history, something that made Andrea's life even more complicated. As she grew into her teens, Andrea drifted from place to place, sometimes with her mom, sometimes on the couch at a cousin's house, sometimes at her older boyfriend's home. She was, in the description of people who remember her, always looking for love, never quite able to trust anyone would stick around. Yet, friends note, GPT 4.1 15K characters, certainly. Here's a comprehensive, narration-friendly, straight-through script about the disappearance of Andrea Cotton. The flow is designed for copy and paste, with documentary-style pacing, emotional detail, and responsible, accurate recounting of known facts, rumors, and context. In the winter of 2004, the quiet town of Corsicana, Texas, lost a young woman whose name, for most, brings only whispers and rumors. Andrea Cotton was 17 when she vanished, yet the truth about her fate remains out of reach almost 2 decades on. Her life and disappearance paint a raw, painfully human story of struggle, hope, prejudice, and silence, a story that echoes through her hometown even today. Andrea Cotton's childhood was marked by hardship and rootlessness. Her family was troubled, her father in and out of prison, her mother struggling for stability. As Andrea grew older, she rarely spent long in one place, shuttling between her mothers, a cousin's, and sometimes the home of her much older boyfriend. She was a wanderer, but not by choice. Friends and relatives remember a girl desperate for connection, searching for love wherever she could find it, often in the wrong places. By age 16, Andrea had given birth to her daughter. The father was a man 3 decades her senior, later convicted of unrelated robberies and destined himself for prison. That relationship would cast a long shadow on Andrea's young adulthood. Complicating things further, the baby was mixed race, bringing to the surface ugly tensions in the family and town alike. People called her a wild child, and it is true that Andrea was no stranger to risk. She drank, she smoked marijuana, she sometimes stole alcohol from her peers' behavior that, with no safety net, could only lead her closer to the margins and even greater vulnerability. Andrea's struggles with abandonment and instability are sadly familiar in tales of missing or endangered youth. Her story is not about criminality, but about survival in an unforgiving environment. The circumstances of Andrea's home life drew the attention of Texas Child Protective Services. At some point before January 2004, CPS intervened and removed Andrea's baby from her care. The exact details have never been made public and are now lost in the silence and confusion that so often surrounds cases like Andrea's. Some say it was because of Andrea's unstable housing, her substance use, or simply because she was a teenage mother. Others suggest that her own family, upset that the baby was biracial, may have pushed for the child to be taken away. Whatever the reason, the result was devastating for Andrea. Her young daughter was placed for adoption and, according to what little is known, grew up with a loving family far from Corsicana and the drama that haunted Andrea's life. Nevertheless, Andrea did not give up easily. She continued attending scheduled visitations, maintaining the precious bond she could with her child. For Andrea, those visitations were a beacon of hope. And then, on January 22nd, 2004, Andrea Cotton disappeared. That Thursday was supposed to be like any other. Andrea had a visitation scheduled with her daughter for the next day. Friends and family are adamant that she never would have missed it by choice, a point that would later become crucial to understanding why many dismissed the theory that Andrea ran away. But in the aftermath of her vanishing, rumors took the place of police reports. Details of Andrea's last movements are at best murky, at worst contradictory, and lost to the passage of time. Some locals remember seeing a white van, or was it a truck, with 2 Hispanic men. Others say Andrea was last seen entering a gold car with a single man, whose identity remains unknown. No official report ever clarified these conflicting accounts, nor has any witness come forward with a story that led to solid evidence. Other theories multiplied with each year that passed. Whispers about why Andrea would be harmed abound. Some speculate that her disappearance was linked to racial tensions, that she was targeted because she had a mixed-race child, that her family's refusal to take in the baby after CPS stepped in was an act of prejudice, or that in a small Texas town, certain people just don't like certain things. There was also talk about Andrea's relationships. Was it possible that her older ex-boyfriend, bitter or threatened by CPS, played a role? Or was Andrea caught up in an argument with her mother's current boyfriend, a man whose criminal history and attitudes made him a natural focus of suspicion? Some point to her reputation for stealing alcohol or getting into conflict as a risk, maybe. She crossed the wrong person on the wrong night. Then come the stories of confessions. A local man, not so much a friend as a known presence in the scene Andrea wandered, has allegedly confessed to her relatives, maybe out of guilt, maybe out of bravado, maybe not at all, because small-town rumors have a way of growing with every telling. Police records, if any exist, remain sealed or were never compiled with any thoroughness. There's word that another individual failed more than one polygraph test during the initial investigation, but again, nothing came of it, and polygraph results on their own mean little in court. Meanwhile, law enforcement treated Andrea's case with a lack of urgency that is all too common for missing teens, especially those living unstable lives. Some officers suggested she ran away, that she would show up eventually. Others quietly judged her for drinking, drug use, and erratic behavior. There would be no Amber Alert, no news cycle devoted to her fate. In Corsicana, the official silence was matched by the everyday silence of people who preferred to forget. But Andrea did not simply leave. There is no trace of her existence after that night in January 2004. No phone calls, no social services, no visits, no sightings. She left behind all her possessions. Most importantly, she missed her scheduled visit with her daughter, something her friends and supporters say she never would have willingly skipped. It is this, more than any single rumor or theory, that convinces those who knew her that Andrea meant foul play. The years rolled by, and with every new tragedy, Andrea's case became a ghost story retold in fragments at family gatherings or in online forums devoted to the missing. Her daughter, now an adult, was adopted by a caring family, a fact that still brings rage and regret to those who think Andrea's own kin might have taken her in had it been a different town, a different era, a different story. Why did no one step up? Some blame racial prejudice in the family, others claim poverty and dysfunction left no one capable handling a new life. CPS placed the child far away, breaking the bond that tethered Andrea's hope to the future. Friends recall that whatever mistakes she made, Andrea's love for her daughter was the realest thing about her. Losing that many believe might have been the final undoing of a girl already on the edge. As the timeline of Andrea's disappearance grew longer, the stories grew darker. Some whispered she was murdered for having a mixed-race child. Others suggested jealousy, anger, or threats over money, drugs, or simple teenage chaos led to violence. No body was ever found, no death certificate ever issued, no arrests made. Was Andrea killed by someone she knew and trusted? Was she the victim of a random crime, a stranger in a van? Was she betrayed by a family member or by small-town secrets? Did someone frustrated by gossip or angered by her choices finally snap? Everyone has a theory. Everyone has a guess. But few are willing to step forward and say what they know to police, to reporters, to each other. Fear, loyalty, or simple exhaustion with the whole sad business keeps lips sealed. Over the years, there have been occasional flickers of hope, someone seeing a woman who looks like Andrea in Dallas, or a supposed tip from someone passing through Navarro County. Each time, the hope dies as quickly as it appears. Nothing credible has ever emerged. Public records about Andrea Cotton's disappearance are sparse. Her case rarely makes missing persons roundups on the evening news. She is sometimes remembered in missing persons databases, a name with a date, a face in a sea of faces. The few people who remain invested in her story, the ones who attended the same parties, walked the same streets, and remember her love for her baby, are left to wrestle with doubt, pain, or perhaps secret guilt. Decades bring only more questions. Could so many people really keep such a secret for so long? Was it a single act of violence, enabled by the chaotic neglect of Andrea's circumstances, a tragedy that simply slipped through the cracks? Or is the truth more feverish, more sinister, a case of collective silence, of a crime that enough people choose not to remember or not to tell, for reasons of fear, loyalty, or shame? At the center of the storm remains Andrea, her youth and her spirit defined as much by her missteps as by her longing for connection, her hope to lift herself out of survival mode and make something better for herself and her little girl. The town of Corsicana may never give up its secrets, but Andrea Cotton, the lost daughter, mother, friend, and child, should not be forgotten. Her life and her disappearance deserve more than silence and rumor. Her story is one of too many, a story of girls whose circumstances keep them invisible, who vanish between the lines of police reports, family conflicts, and the prejudices of small towns. If answers are ever to come, they will require someone to speak, the kind of personal courage that has always haunted the margins of stories like Andrea's. Until then, she is both everywhere and nowhere. A face on a missing poster, a name in a case file, a daughter left behind. Nearly 20 years later, the question remains as sharp and painful as ever in Corsicana. What happened to Andrea Cotton? And why, after all this time, does no one seem willing or able to say? It was late January 2020, in the quiet suburbs of Colorado Springs, a place not unused to the whistling wind and the calm of winter afternoons. Gannon Stotch, an 11-year-old boy described by his teachers as gentle and thoughtful, was home that day under the care of his stepmother, Letitia Stotch. Gannon's father, Al, was away with the National Guard, and so Letitia was managing things at home, at least. That was her story. On January 27th, Letitia says Gannon left their home in the afternoon, supposedly to visit a friend. She would call authorities later, reporting him missing. When police responded and began their search, they at first treated it as a missing child, possibly a runaway, as Letitia suggested in her initial statements. Immediately, family members, friends, neighbors, and community volunteers mobilized, forming search parties, printing flyers, sharing Gannon's image on social media and news outlets. Helicopters, drones, and canine units joined in the search that swept through wooded areas, parks, sewer lines, and distant neighborhoods, all while the anxious faces of Gannon's parents appeared on camera, pleading for his safe return. At first, the story Letitia presented seemed plausible to some. Gannon, she said, had left with his Nintendo Switch, adding the possible intention to meet a friend in the neighborhood. But as days stacked upon days, and no friend reported seeing Gannon, suspicion began to crystallize. Law enforcement dug deeper. Surveillance footage from a neighbor's security system would prove pivotal. Video captured on the day in question showed Letitia leaving the house with Gannon, yet, critically, when she returned hours later, she was alone. Letitia's interviews with police and media began to shift in tone and content. First, she speculated that Gannon ran away. Then she began referencing a possible abduction by a man she identified only as Eduardo, a fictitious figure she claimed attacked her in her home. At varying points, Letitia said she was a victim too, painting herself as someone targeted by intruders or kidnappers. However, the forensic investigation quickly undermined these claims. Police found evidence of a violent struggle in Gannon's bedroom, enough blood to suggest a grievous injury or worse. Traces of blood also turned up in areas Letitia likely cleaned on the garage floor in the family's vehicles. The Volkswagen Tiguan she drove that day contained forensic evidence tying back to Gannon. Yet when asked about the scientific findings, Letitia provided confusing answers or claimed ignorance. Detectives would later testify that her explanations not only shifted, but often contradicted the physical evidence entirely. What became clear to investigators, though not yet to the public, was that Gannon's disappearance was no ordinary missing person case. They classified it as a homicide. Investigators believe the attack occurred inside Gannon's bedroom, followed by efforts to clean the scene and dispose of the evidence. The time it took Letitia to leave with Gannon in the car and eventually return home alone matched the timeline when the most critical events must have unfolded. Letitia's subsequent moves further fueled suspicion. She rented a van, which she would use to travel across state lines, first to Texas, then all the way to Florida, ostensibly to reunite with family. On the surface, it was a convenient narrative. Below, detectives suspected something far more sinister. They believed that during those travels, Letitia was in the process of disposing of evidence. Authorities' efforts to shadow her cross-country would not bear fruit immediately, but the suspicions proved tragically well-placed. For nearly 2 months, Gannon's family waited for answers. Then, on March 20th, 2020, a grim discovery was made. Construction workers, cleaning up roadside debris beneath a bridge in Pace, Florida, more than 1,300 miles from Colorado Springs, discovered a suitcase containing human remains. DNA testing confirmed what everyone feared. It was Gannon Stotch. The condition of the remains made the timeline difficult to reconstruct with forensic precision. Nevertheless, the suitcase contained a blanket and clothing matching what Gannon had worn on the day he went missing. Alongside, investigators found a piece of carpet and traces of blood, evidence that would appear to tie directly to the Stotch family home in Colorado. With Gannon's remains found, the legal system moved ahead. Letitia Stotch was charged with first-degree murder, child abuse resulting in death, tampering with a deceased human body, and a variety of related counts. She initially entered not guilty pleas and would go on to claim mental illness. Over the years, as her case wound through court, Letitia would claim to suffer from dissociative identity disorder, maintaining, at times, that an alternate personality named Maria Sanchez was responsible for Gannon's death. During the trial, the prosecution presented a mountain of evidence: surveillance videos, forensic blood evidence, cell phone location data, texts and internet searches recovered from Letitia's devices. Among these, one search was especially chilling. Just days before Gannon's disappearance, Letitia had searched the internet for gruesome topics, such as, "I need to find real police," and "Can I be charged with murder without a body?" The prosecution painted a picture of a woman seeking to divert blame, destroy evidence, and above all avoid detection. The defense tried to sow doubt. They claimed that Letitia was suffering from a profound mental disorder, that she had been trapped in a cycle of psychological distress, and that the murder was the result of a break from reality. The jury, however, was not swayed. In May 2023, Letitia Stotch was found guilty of Gannon's murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For the community, and especially for Gannon's family, the verdict provided some closure, but also new questions and an ocean of grief. Gannon's father and biological mother addressed the court in emotional statements, describing the loss not only of a son, but of the trust and peace that once settled over their home. Images that stuck with the nation of a father doubling over in court, of posters worn with rain and waned, remain in the public memory. Even with a verdict, several mysteries in Gannon's case linger stubbornly in the shadows. What was Letitia's true motive? Was it rage, resentment, or something lying deeper, a long-festering resentment or hatred, or perhaps simply a moment of uncontrolled violence? Was there a history of abuse in the home that went unreported, warnings missed by teachers, neighbors, or even family members? Investigators and internet sleuths continue to pick over the logistics surrounding the case. How did Letitia alone manage to transport a decomposing body such a great distance, avoiding law enforcement or any suspicion? Was her use of a rental van simply lucky, or was it a calculated, premeditated act? Some have speculated about potential accomplices, someone who helped her carry the suitcase, or provide directions or shelter along the way. Officially, investigators continue to maintain that she acted alone. No evidence links any other party to the crime or the body's transport. Yet, the logistics have left many members of the public wondering how a single person could navigate the disposal with such sinister effectiveness. Letitia's shifting stories before and during the trial do little to clarify the sequence of events. Her accusations of home invasion, her invocation of a mysterious man named Eduardo, and her claims of alternate personalities cloud the already murky narrative. These statements have led some to speculate about her true mental state. The defense used this narrative in court, but why did it emerge only after Letitia was accused? Was it an effort to avoid responsibility, or was there a genuine, if profoundly troubling, psychological element that explained her actions? The final hours of Gannon's life remain painfully unclear. Forensic evidence shows he suffered a violent assault, but the precise sequence is lost, a puzzle whose crucial pieces were swept away with the Colorado wind that January afternoon. Gannon's movements that day, captured in part by surveillance cameras and tracked in part by cell phones, and with the tragic evidence found months later and over 1,000 miles away. Letitia's efforts to clean up the home, launder blood-soaked items, and misdirect investigators speak to a series of choices that occurred over days, not just moments. Chillingly, some of her internet searches, tracked after the crime, suggest she was thinking not only about how to cover her tracks, but how her actions would look to police and the public. The calculus of premeditation, desperation, and denial, where they begin and end, may never be fully known. Meanwhile, the community that once rallied to search for a missing boy is left reckoning with the aftershocks. Some cling to anger, others to sorrow. For many, the case has become a grim touchstone, a warning not only about the vulnerability of children, but about the ambiguities and darkness that can dwell inside a home. To this day, questions remain whispered in online forums, in true crime podcasts, and family living rooms. How could a parent, even a step-parent, do this? Why did no one see it coming? What, if anything, does this say about the hidden currents that flow beneath the surface of family life? Despite the evidence, the conviction, and Letitia's incarceration, elements of the case feel unfinished, like a story whose shadows cling to its every page. For Gannon's parents, closure can never be perfectly complete. Pictures of Gannon, his wide grin, his baseball cap, his favorite toys sit framed in living rooms and bedrooms across the city and state. Year after year, memorials are held and charities founded in his name as a community tries to pull good from heartbreak and confusion. The official record may now be closed, but the Gannon Stotch case remains a tragedy marked by layers of mystery: a child lost, a family fractured, and 1,000 questions left echoing in the hearts and minds of all who followed his story. On a rainy Friday morning, June 4th, 2010, 7-year-old Kyron Horman disappeared from Skyline Elementary School in Portland, Oregon. He was last seen at a school science fair, excited and proud to present his project on the red-eyed tree frog. That morning, Kyron arrived at school with his stepmother, Terry, and his baby sister. Together, they walked to his classroom to drop off his backpack and jacket. Terry snapped a photo of Kyron standing in front of his science project, the very last confirmed image of him. After setting up his display, Kyron and Terry walked the halls, admiring other classroom exhibits. Just before the first bell at 8:45 am, Kyron told Terry he wanted to visit his former kindergarten teacher. They split up to use different staircases, and Terry later said she saw Kyron heading down the hallway toward his classroom. That moment was the last time anyone can say for sure they saw Kyron. Terry left the school and began her errands for the day. She visited 2 Fred Meyer stores in search of medicine for her daughter's ear infection, stopped at a dry cleaner, visited a craft store, and worked out at the gym. Surveillance cameras and receipts confirmed her visits to these shops. Back at school, attendance records marked Kyron as absent when roll was called. However, with the science fair in progress and parents, staff, and students moving between exhibits, no one immediately noticed his absence. That afternoon, Kane, Horman, and Terry went to meet Kyron at the bus stop. When the bus arrived and Kyron was not on board, frantic calls were made to the school. Within an hour, school officials realized Kyron had not been present or accounted for since the morning, and police were summoned. By evening, a citywide broadcast was issued and a massive search effort began. Volunteers, law enforcement, and the National Guard combed the school grounds, nearby forests, creeks, and rural roads. The search would grow to become the largest in Oregon's history. Every staff member, parent, and student who had been at Skyline on June 4th was interviewed multiple times. The FBI assisted with investigation and searches. Despite all these efforts, there was no trace of Chiron, no physical evidence, no credible sightings, and no definitive leads. Even Chiron's backpack and jacket were found exactly where he had left them in his classroom. In the days that followed, public scrutiny shifted toward Terry Horman, Chiron's stepmother, who had been the last person to see him. Law enforcement conducted multiple polygraph examinations with Terry, who either failed or received inconclusive results. Her timeline and actions from 8:45 a.m. to early afternoon were heavily investigated. Media reports revealed that months before Chiron disappeared, a landscaper who worked for the Hormans claimed Terry had solicited him to kill her husband, Kane. An attempted police sting failed, and no charges regarding this murder-for-hire claim were ever filed. Other family members, including Chiron's father, Kane, and his biological mother, Desiree, cooperated fully with investigators and were quickly ruled out as persons of interest. Although law enforcement has never officially named the suspect, they have made clear that Terry remains a person of significant interest in the case. She has publicly denied involvement in Chiron's disappearance. Over the years, numerous theories have circulated. Some believe Chiron was abducted by a stranger at school. Others suggest he may have left the school with someone he knew. Some believe an accident may have occurred and was subsequently covered up by an adult at the school or in his life. No evidence has surfaced to support any single theory. No physical trace of Chiron has ever been found. The investigation has never closed. The search for Chiron Harmon continues. Community members gather each year for a walk to remember him, and both of Chiron's parents remain active in advocating for answers. More than a decade later, the fate of Chiron Harmon remains Oregon's greatest unsolved mystery. He is forever remembered as the little boy with glasses, beaming next to a science fair project, still waiting to come home. If you have any information related to Chiron Harmon's disappearance, please contact the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office or your local FBI office. Someone, somewhere, knows what happened that day. May the truth one day come to light.